which is where we are in the presidential race, what it is that we have President Trump doing, as we have states yet not yet called. We had states that President Trump won on Election Day, and we have pouring in before us ballots, absentee ballots, mail-in ballots that seem to be somehow almost all going for Joe Biden, and very, very strongly increasing concerns among millions of Americans that fraud is at the root of what we're watching. But I first want to ask just a little, Maria Bartiromo, the brilliant Fox News host, she had a tweet out that made a really great summary of it. So I believe I sent that to Matt the Wonderful. I'll quick put that tweet up and show you what she had to say. She says, this is Maria Bartiromo 3 hours ago, so maybe 5 hours ago by now. 4 a.m. dump, Wisconsin, 65,000 votes, 100% for Biden. 4 a.m. dump, Michigan, 138,499 votes, 100% for Biden. Arizona poll workers forcing voters to use Sharpies, which result in invalidated ballots, which is now being investigated in Arizona, and Trump leading in Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and they stopped counting before the vote ferry visits overnight. That's the language of Maria Bartiromo. But this is why, when you look at those, what she's talking about there, this is why, just a beginning example of why so many Americans are deeply, deeply concerned, because they don't think that we're waiting for an honest, continuing count of the ballot, but we are instead, as I decided to call this topic, we're called vote concocting corruption. And this is where we are. And I want to run through some of the reasons why it matters so much that Donald Trump decides to hang in there strong and continue fighting. I said in the first 5, and I'll say it again one more time very quickly, at least it's clear that the American people did not, in this 2020 election cycle, they did not agree to the radical leftist agenda that has been put out there by Bernie Sanders, AOC, the entire leftist cabal running the Democrat Party. America did not embrace that. America helped, if they at least stabilize, if not increase, the majority Republicans have in the Senate. And they increased the Republican House seats in the U.S. House, even though it appears the Democrats will have a slim majority still in the U.S. House. But it's very consequential as a measure of what the American people think, that they rejected this massive predicted blue wave. The American people reject it, makes people question more and more why it is all these things happen, but somehow we're supposed to believe that Trump was not able to carry the day, especially in places where he was way up at the end of Election Day, and somehow now is with all the magically appearing mail-in ballots, he is now fighting to stay in the race. So I'll tell you first that the White House, at least earlier today, put out their statement. They were talking about how they see their path to victory. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, who is so brilliant and fun to listen to, she basically said the White House path to Trump win runs through Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Georgia. We talked about Arizona yesterday. In Arizona, the Fox News, which did they were deplorable actually on election night, awarding the state of Arizona to the Biden column really early in the evening. Very quickly, the GOP chair in Arizona, Kelly Ward, was out there on social news, and I think she put a statement out just saying, this is being called way too early. Fox, you're going to look silly, you're going to look bad, don't do this. And she's talking about basically that the uncounted ballots in Arizona are largely coming from Maricopa County, which is overwhelmingly Republican, and that if the trend they were seeing in the counting of ballots in Maricopa County continued, they're 2-1 for Trump over Biden, Trump would win that state. And again, the media and several other outlets are trying to push to stick Arizona into the blue column, and the Republicans in Arizona are hanging strong and saying, no, we're actually going to fight this. There is a rally tomorrow. If you happen to be listening in Arizona, there is a rally tomorrow at 10 a.m. in Phoenix outside the voting center. If you want to know the address, you can email me at americacanwetalk@gmail.com. I don't have the address available, but you can, I might be able to find it, but you can go to that rally. And here, I'll tell you what the address is of that happy rally, because someone sent it to me. Yeah, Protect the Vote rally tomorrow tomorrow, 10 a.m., Maricopa County Tabulation and Election Center, 510 South 3rd Avenue in Phoenix. So I don't know if it interests you, but this is something where it is actually helpful to have the grassroots on the streets outside the voting centers demanding, and really what they're doing is conveying the message to the vote counters: we are watching you. We are watching you. We understand, and I'll tell you what Frank Gaffney alluded to, I will just say straight out, how this election in 2020 appears to be going. It seems like it was a long ahead of time set play to where the American people were kind of conditioned to believe we just have to have lots of mail-in ballots this time because of COVID, even though that wasn't necessary. And the mail-in ballots seem to be pouring in, as you just saw from Rita Bartiromo's tweet. They seem to be pouring in at pretty much 100% for Biden. And we're all supposed to go, oh, who knew? You know, election day, Trump wins in all these states, but all of a sudden, look at this, who knew? Mail-in ballots all for Biden. And there is a growing suspicion we simply cannot trust the outcome of this election, especially based on the mail-in ballots. I want to play for you a video. The Project Veritas people strike again. Project Veritas, the word Veritas meaning truth, that organization that actually does undercover videos, and they record people who don't know they're being recorded. We played one a few weeks ago from San Antonio, Texas, where these two women were actually just openly, they didn't know they were being recorded, but looking in the camera saying, oh yeah, I can deliver you, 5,000 votes for this amount of money in this race. I can deliver votes. Just tell me where you need them. And actually quoting prices for how many votes they could produce. Project Veritas recorded them. But this video on Project Veritas is simply unbelievable. It relates to this late rush of mail-in ballots, all the questions, of course, about legitimacy, what laws are in place that govern the mail-in ballots, what ballots can be counted, when they have to be postmarked. But let me have Matt the Wonderful play this Project Veritas video, and then we'll talk about it.
Tell us where you work.
I work in the Traverse City Post Office, more specifically the Barlow branch.
Your boss told you and your colleagues something that shocked you this morning. What was it?
We were issued a directive this morning to collect any ballots we find in mailboxes, collection boxes, just outgoing mail in general, separate them at the end of the day so that they could hand stamp them with the previous day's date. Today is November 4th, for clarification.
Who is your boss, and what is his title?
Jonathan would be a direct supervisor, yes. As of right now, he is the opening supervisor for the Barlow branch post office. So and this is anecdotal, carrier down in another office said they watched the postmaster doing it. If it were just a typical day, it would be clerks doing it up at the distribution center.
So 8 p.m. election day, November 3rd, the Court of Appeals ruled ballots have to be received by that time. And what were you told?
To separate them today so they could mark them with yesterday's date and send them through the express system to wherever they needed to go.
This appears to be an attempt to circumvent Michigan law and allow late votes. And you said there was a hamper where letter carriers were supposed to leave their ballots. Where are the ballots now?
They were putting them into express bags to go to the distribution center. In regards to a hamper, there was a standard hamper that all letter mail is supposed to go to, and they had a tub next to it that we were supposed to put any ballots collected today into. Yes.
What made you come forward?
That's sketchy. I don't like sketchy. It screams corruption. Also, knowing the post office's leanings politically, it didn't seem quite right.
What is your message to other postal workers who see things like this?
Report it. How are we supposed to have any integrity in this country if we are just going to let things slide based on a scaling issue?
Are you afraid of retaliation against you?
I've had whistleblower policies backfire on me in the past, so yes.
We'll have to reach out to Jonathan Clark for comment. Hey, is this Jonathan?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm a reporter with Project Veritas, James O'Keefe here, and I have information that you guys have been stamping ballots with the previous date, November 3rd. He just hung up the phone on me. He just hung up the phone on me.
Okay, folks. I know that there are always anecdotal stories. Every election, and I have worked elections. I've been an election clerk, an election judge. I've been a poll watcher. I've done it all for elections for years and years. I know after every election, there are always a bunch of stray stories out there. Someone will say, oh, I worked at polling location, blah, blah. And, someone cast their vote. And then when it popped up again to review, some of their votes have been changed. And it usually turns out that the person who was making the vote had made a mistake or, had incorrectly entered something. My point is, I'm aware of many false accusations or, not even if they're just knowingly false, but just kind of confused, mistaken accusations or suspicions about cheating and voting. I'm aware of this. This is not that. This is a guy who is so concerned about losing his job that he's disguising his voice, coming forward, volunteering to come forward to Project Veritas to tell them that as a U.S. Postal Service worker, he was told to take ballots that got mailed too late, put them in a different bin so they could be postmarked for the previous day to appear as though they met the statutory and court-imposed standard of when the ballots had to be date stamped. That's one concern people have. But it's a huge concern. Why would anyone, tell me, why would anyone, a Postal Service supervisor, risk their job to tell people to do something clearly illegal, to tell postal workers to maneuver mail and get it into a place where they're going to date stamp it the previous day when it wasn't mailed the previous day? Why would anyone do that? Except, I guess you have the rogue U.S. Postal Service supervisor who just, loves Biden so much or hates Trump so much. But this is a very serious allegation. I don't know who's going to investigate it, but very, very serious. This kind of thing is among the many kind of things that make people nervous about this election cycle. Second little video I want to share with you. So Rudy Giuliani, the lawyer for President Trump, and a team of lawyers have filed lawsuits in various states where these mail-in ballots after Trump has won on Election Day, and by the way, Election Day includes everyone who votes on Election Day, plus all the early vote, which is itself all the early vote subject to the potential for the interference with, the manipulation, the corruption that you heard Russ Ramsland explain on this show last week or 2 weeks ago, talking about how his organization has proven that there has been not only the ability, but it has actually occurred, of electronic manipulation of voting data after voting closes. So early voting ends, there's a lapse period, and then Election Day arrives. And in that lapse period, that data of early voting outcomes is stored on a computer. This gentleman who's been on my show, Russ Ramsland, has brought this information to the attention of numerous officials, and which is that they can show that votes were shifted in this time between end of early voting and when Election Day started. And so that's another arena, another area because of concern about whether what we're seeing and the vote outcome in America is consistent with truth and with facts. But the other thing I want to share with you today and talk about is President Trump's team has been filing lawsuits relating to the counting of early ballots. I want to ask Matt the Wonderful to play a clip by Rudy Giuliani. He's explaining one series of the lawsuits, one issue, which has to do with the refusal of some officials in Pennsylvania to let poll watchers, which are a central part of election integrity, poll watchers observe the counting of the mail-in ballots. So Matt, if you play that one little clip.
We have filed a lawsuit. The lawsuit actually required that when these mail-in ballots that are highly suspicious anyway, this form of balloting has always been considered the most prone to fraud. That's according to the New York Times when it didn't apply to candidate President Trump. Well, we were supposed to be allowed by law to observe the counting of the ballots. Now, observe means, to any intelligent person, being able to look at it. The way it's interpreted by the Democrat crooked machine of Philadelphia is that the observers can be 20 or 30 feet away, never able to see the ballot itself, never able to see if it was properly postmarked, properly addressed, properly signed on the outside. all the things that often lead to disqualification of ballots, or make it very easy to dump 50,000 totally fraudulent ballots because they're not observed. This went on for 20 hours. While all of you thought there was some kind of legitimate count going on here in Philadelphia, it was totally illegitimate.
And the reason I wanted to play that is because I think that if you just scan mainstream media news, and you can scan all sorts of places, and if they're looking for people, if there are people in media who want to just elect Biden at all costs, they're beginning to use that typical tool of the left of mockery and derision and claiming, oh, now Trump is suing over everything, and Trump is suing over, they're trying to count ballots and Trump is stopping them, which is what they were claiming this was, that people were trying to count ballots and Trump was stopping them. No, Trump is actually saying, the Trump team is saying that you have to comply with election law and permit actual observers, actual poll watchers, watch what you're doing. So if you're getting a bunch of ballots that got filled out in some basement last night, coming into the voting center, you'd easily be able to see if they were problematic by looking at the envelope, but you can't see them because you're forced to sit 20 or 30 feet away. The whole purpose of the poll watcher has been eliminated. Now, I will say that particular problem in Pennsylvania, I believe the Pennsylvania Supreme Court finally did say to the elections department, you actually have to let them really poll watch, not just pretend poll watch sitting too far away where they can't see anything. That doesn't count for poll watching. The court has said that. Numerous reports still out that even after the court said to the elections department, you have to let them actually see, that the elections officials are still not letting the poll watchers do this. And I ask you this, just ponder this. If you think that every election in America has been completely clean, no cheating, nothing wrongdoing, and all this is a bunch of hyperbole or sour grapes or attempt to agitate the American people, ask yourself this, why would any elections official who, if they are in charge of an election of this magnitude in the 2020 presidential election cycle, and they recognize how toxic the political environment is, why would any election official in Philadelphia or anywhere else in this country have hesitated for a nanosecond about letting poll watchers in? Why did the Trump team have to go to court to get the Pennsylvania court to order the election officials to follow election law? It's not like the election officials did not know the law. They knew. They just decided, if we can keep these creepy poll watchers out, we're going to do it. And only because the Trump team, the legal team, the Trump administration brought it to the attention, not just of the court, but to the American people, they finally got an order saying you got to let them watch, and still reports are ongoing that they're not permitting that to happen. There's another, so that's one reason that you're seeing litigation out of the White House, out of the Trump legal team. Another legal issue I want to spend a little bit of time about, because I think it actually matters in understanding how serious and consequential this litigation is. Again, if you read the mainstream media, you'd think that all of the election counting and the poll and the mail-in ballot counting was just flowing smoothly along, and everyone's following the law, and everything is hunky-dory, and Trump comes along and tries to stir things up. It's sour grapes because Trump thinks he's going to lose, and that's why he's doing this. But let me explain some of the serious issues. Actually, I'll explain this serious issue in one moment. There's one other quick story to tell you. I decided not to share the video of this, but I'll just tell you the story in quick summary form. There is a woman, a lawyer from Texas, who is on the Trump legal team. This woman on the Trump legal team, was sent up to observe, to be poll watching in Detroit. So she's poll watching. They're apparently letting them in there to do poll watching. And she was told she could go. She was able to leave, but she didn't leave. She decided to hang around. It's 4 in the morning, and she just said, her language, and this woman's name, she's not hiding her name. Her name is Kelly Sorrell. She's a Texas lawyer and a member of Lawyers for Trump. She's in Detroit poll watching as they are counting votes. She sat outside the poll counting area, the vote counting area, and she observed a truck pull up at 4 in the morning, and people get out of the truck and load boxes into a wagon and pull the wagon into the voting location place. She took a video of it. And she said, this is kind of weird. I don't know and she actually described them bringing in suitcases, coolers, and a rolled wagon with some kind of box in it into the voting location at 4 in the morning. Now, I understand. And so she's saying, this looks very, very suspicious to me. What is being brought in those boxes? Are these, the latest mail-in ballots that the Democrats are magically finding somewhere? I mean, what is it? What is being brought in at 4 in the morning in the dark of night? So she has it in video. She puts a video out there. Of course, it went viral. So I'll tell you two things. One is that there is a media outlet, a television station, a local television station in Detroit, that quick put out a story and said, oh, wait a minute, this is crazy. This is making a fuss over nothing. That guy, who's pulling the wagon, that's our guy, and he was just bringing in some camera equipment. And because it was heavy, he put it in a wagon. And so, that could be true. And that's what they're saying. And so they're using the usual mocking, ridicule about this woman. And they're saying, why is she making a big fuss? And she made everybody concerned. It was unjustified. This is a normal thing. This guy just happened to be at 4 in the morning, putting his camera equipment, his videographer, into a wagon and pulling it into the station, into where the poll counting was happening. So this lawyer, Kelly Sorrell, told the story, gave it to several news outlets. The video went viral, and this news outlet is now saying, oh, no, that's not true. She's just, at the very best, she misunderstood, or she's stirring up trouble where it's unjustified. So they're really mocking her. But I will say this. I think that if that news station story is true, that the person in the video, who you can see unloading stuff out of the back of the truck at 4 in the morning in the dark and pulling it in, taking it into the voting location. Why they were going there with a camera, I don't know. Maybe there was another floor of the building or the basement or the floor of the building that he had some legitimate reason to be there. But you think he would come forward? You think he, the actual guy with the stuff out of the van, would come forward and say, hey, let me do a quick press conference for you. My name is Joe Blow, and that was me in that video that this Kelly Sorrell recorded. And I was just getting out. This is all that was in the camera. This is all that was in my wagon. Here it is. It was a camera. That's all. I just used the wagon because it was heavy. He would do that. Why wouldn't you do that when there's this level of concern in this election cycle? And the second thing is, Kelly Sorrell also went on to say visitors were able to enter and leave the facility where the votes were being counted without any identification check. The workers were apparently working 6-hour shifts. They didn't need to have overnight luggage, but they were able to come and go rather freely. And so that is another issue going on in Detroit, another reason for a portion of the Trump litigation filed in this ongoing vote count. Final thing I was going to mention on the litigation. And I'm covering this because I want to make clear the media is going nuts with the argument that Biden has this one, it's all over, and all we're seeing is noise out of Trump and last-minute desperation. There's nothing to these allegations. He's just stirring up trouble, trying to find some reason to get, to overturn some election result. But I will tell you, there was a great argument made in some of the litigation Trump's team filed, and very quickly I'm going to summarize the legal argument in my few remaining minutes here. But that was this. In the Constitution, in the Elections Clause of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 4, the Constitution provides that the elections, it says, the state legislatures have authority to set the time, place, and manner of federal elections, the rules governing election process, including absentee ballots. Everyone understands this is a function the Constitution has assigned to the states, to the state legislatures, the elected legislators. What the Trump team is raising in several of these pieces of litigation or several causes of action is you have all sorts of decisions being made outside of the legislature's setting up of the process. You have decisions being made by election department officials, governors, other individuals in these various states who are making new policy. Based on COVID, we got to extend the deadline. We got to change this. We got to do this. I know even in the great state of Texas, we had our governor, Republican governor, but he extended the dates for early voting in Texas because of COVID. He made early voting start even earlier, and there is either litigation, I think there's litigation against him on that point. It's the job of the legislature. And the reason it matters, it's not just, who cares, legislators, election department officials, governors, who cares, anyone can do it. The point is, the Constitution put it that way because you want to have the people who are making policy related to elections, changing the rules about ballots, changing the rules about whether your ballot has to match the signature on file, changing the rules about deadlines, changing the rules about anything related to mail-in ballots. You want those people, elected legislators, accountable to the people. What's happening in this election cycle, because of the frenzy and tizzy America has been worked into in this election cycle, in great part due to COVID, is that you have policy being made by individuals other than legislators. And there were many people, serious constitutional lawyers, serious election lawyer experts, saying, you can't be doing this. You can't just be making up stuff as you go along, changing the rules about when something is valid, changing the rules about when your ballot has to be postmarked, changing the rule about what if there's no postmark at all. You can't start changing the rules. So you have Trump's team filed a lawsuit in Georgia. In the Georgia situation, Atlanta is another one of those. Trump won Georgia hands down on election day, but you have the leftists in this country, the Biden supporters playing games with the vote in Georgia. You had a GOP poll observer saw 53 late absentee ballots illegally added to a stack of on-time absentee ballots in just one county. That comes from Deputy Campaign Manager and Senior Counsel Justin Clark. He says, these are Democrat officials permitting the Democrats to steal this election. This is one of the reasons that the Trump administration is litigating, because you have a morass of people under the radar of the elected legislators, functioning under the radar, seemingly engaging in conduct that may actually change the outcome of the election, and these people do not have the authority to do that. There's many stories, other stories I could talk with you about. I'm going to wait to another day. There was some good data about Trump in terms of the shift and who's supporting him, who's defending him. But I want to just close out by saying we're going to apparently not know the answer to the election in America, at least by the end of today, probably not even until next week or even the week after. But what we are seeing is numerous actions by elected officials, by election officials. Those are two different things. Elected officials and election officials changing rules, trying to make it seems to be more likely that they're somehow engaging in some form of fraud. And this is an election where the Trump team is not going to take this sitting down. They are not going to wait it out and just trust the system and trust all the people in the system. They are going to make sure through this litigation that you get the outcome that's fair, actually based on the will of the voters, the actual legal voters who cast a legal ballot on time. They're the ones whose votes count only. Nobody else's count. One last thing I'll tell you before I go to my why it matters to you is one good example of the extreme frustration that the Trump team is facing is the early calling of some states for Biden, like Arizona, when it still is unknown. In fact, the Arizona Republican officials are saying it looks like it's going to go to Trump. And then you have the example of North Carolina. Election results, the North Carolina officials announced, won't be known till next week. So the country continues to get dragged through this. Obviously, the whole notion of delaying the announcement of a winner in North Carolina, which Trump won on election day, but delaying the outcome of that, the announcing of the outcome, claiming somehow we simply can't count votes any faster, so we're just stuck with this, is you add momentum to the Biden effort to just bulldoze through this process. The Biden effort to bulldoze through and claim that they are the winners, they're done, and then all we're waiting is for the formal electoral college process. All of this game playing so far in our country has inured to the benefit of the Biden team and their effort, it seems, to many Republican voters to steal this election, to say we're gonna as you saw Marie Bartiromo's tweet, we're going to cease counting when we could be counting. We're going to refuse to announce the winner in North Carolina when it should be Trump. You know, the momentum, either side getting close to the magic 270 number of electoral college votes, it adds momentum, and it actually adds a fatigue factor to people who may have been supporters of Trump, who's saying, well, look, looks like he lost. I guess you lost. Let's just move on. We cannot do this, people. What you heard from Frank Gaffney today, what you heard from Kyle Scheidler yesterday, all make the point that it is a very, very serious election cycle with very dangerous elements on the American left pushing a radical Marxist change of America from a country rooted in freedom and the Constitution to a Marxist-style government, which they are pushing. And if we had a Trump administration win out, there would be far more willingness of the Trump administration to put a stop, to stand down these violent leftists. And if you have a Biden administration, they'll be rolling out the red carpet for what these leftists are up to.